Okay, let's get into this. We've all seen floods. You picture torrential rain, maybe a river just completely overflowing its banks.
Sure, that's the classic image.
But imagine this for a second. You're standing in a town, the streets are filling with water, but it hasn't really rained hard in days. The water is just rising, silently, from beneath the ground.
Yeah, not from the sky.
That's the scenario we're unpacking today. The 2025 structural event in Manchester, Jamaica, it's a really unusual one.
And this deep dive, it's a shortcut right into some very specific intelligence. We're breaking down a structural hydrology report from Devin McLarty.
Right, and this is owned by D Investment Enterprise.
Exactly, and published by D Publishing Group under their, proprietary LoopSpeak framework.
So our mission here is to figure out how that analysis basically reframed the whole Manchester flood, how it went from just another weather disaster to a predictable, almost geological chain reaction, and why that matters everywhere. To even wrap your head around how the ground itself can cause a flood, we have to start with the geology. We're talking about karst terrain.
Right.
You might have heard the term, but the sources we're looking at describe it perfectly. This isn't solid ground you're standing on. It's land built on soluble rock, mostly limestone.
So think of it less like a foundation and more like a saturated high-pressure sponge, one that's been hollowed out over thousands of years.
A sponge, okay.
Yeah, I mean, in karst terrain, you have underground rivers, mallow caverns, sinkholes. It's a whole system that allows a huge amount of water to collect.
And that's the key. It allows immense pressure to build up just beneath the surface. It's like a hidden plumbing system just waiting to burst.
That's it.
So let's get to the event itself. What I found so interesting is that the Jamaican government, specifically the Water Resources Authority, the WRA, they didn't even classify this as a normal weather disaster.
That's correct. The official categorization was a structural geological event.
Yeah.
And the McLarty analysis really hammers this point home.
So a different category entirely.
Fundamentally different from a standard rain event. The cause was identified as a confirmed, rapidly rising groundwater mound.
Exerting immense pressure from below.
Exactly. It was pushing up on the rock structure.
Okay, but I have to push back on that a little because there must have been some rain leading up to it, right?
Of course.
So how can the analysis be so certain that this wasn't just a combination of things, with rain being the main driver? What lets them isolate the groundwater pressure as the cause?
That is the critical question. And they isolate it by looking at the timing and the origin point. The event didn't start during a big tropical storm.
Right.
It started after months of prolonged, heavy regional saturation. The deep aquifer was already completely full.
So the sponge was already soaked.
Exactly. And the first floodwater didn't come from overflowing gullies. It came from low-lying areas filling up from below ground. The WRA confirmed it.
They confirmed the water table rise.
They confirmed the groundwater table rose far beyond what you'd expect from normal seasonal changes, or even surface runoff. It was the deep earth system reacting.
So it was structural pressure, not just surface water volume.
Yes. And that makes the starting point, the ground zero, so important. The analysis pins this whole reaction on the content in Williamsfield area.
That's where it all kicked off.
Absolutely. That area was the focal point of the pressure. It went completely underwater first, and that anchored the entire flood loop.
All because of that pressure from below pushing water up into the weakest spots. So you have this enormous volume of pressurized water underground trying to get out. And you said content sits on a slightly higher limestone shelf.
It does.
Then why didn't the water just keep bubbling up there? Why this slow, creeping disaster that spread out?
That's where the land structure dictates everything. You can think of that limestone shelf like a cap on a bottle, a seal.
Okay, so it was blocked from going straight up.
For the most part, yes. The pressure had to go somewhere else. So the analysis confirms the water was forced to move laterally.
Sideways.
Sideways. It followed the paths of least resistance through cracks in the bedrock, flowing downhill into lower basins.
So we're talking about underground pressure, literally squeezing water sideways through tiny cracks, like trying to squeeze toothpaste out of the side of the tube.
That's a perfect analogy. It's a subterranean displacement, a powerful hydrologic chain reaction.
Where the pressure from one spot transfers to the next.
The saturated high-pressure ground in one node transfers that pressure and that water to the next structurally lower node in sequence.
And that's the core finding of the LoopSpeak intelligence.
It is. The flood's movement wasn't random at all. It followed a predictable path flowing relentlessly southwest, just following the natural slope of the terrain below.
Okay, let's follow that path because understanding that progression is key to the risk. Walk us through the three phases of what the analysis calls the Southwest Flood Risk Corridor.
Certainly. And this progression is exactly why this wasn't some chaotic, sudden event. It was more like a slow-motion geological inevitability.
So phase one.
Phase one covers the first nodes, the ones that went from saturated to actively flooding very quickly. That's content at Williamsfield. Submerged first.
And then Kirkvine.
And then Kirkvine. It went from at risk to actively flooding very fast, which confirmed that lateral spread.
Then the analysis noted something about the road, right?
It did. The main road connecting Kirkvine and Williamsfield became impassable almost immediately. It showed the spread was perfectly aligned with that projected subsurface path.
And that flooding in phase one basically put the phase two communities on notice. The pressure was already at their doorstep.
Precisely. Phase two was put on high alert because they are the next natural geologic stop for that displaced water. We're talking about Porus and Harmons.
And Porus was singled out, wasn't it?
It was. Porus is highlighted in the analysis as the next natural node.
Why specifically Porus?
Because it sits in a known, low-lying geological basin. It's a perfect pressure relief valve, structurally positioned to receive the bulk of that sideways moving water.
It's like the land itself is a funnel pointing directly at Porus.
That's exactly right. And Harmons gets grouped in with Chorus in the official advisories because it's in that same vulnerable hydrologic belt, just southwest of the initial problem area. They're just victims of their geography.
Which brings us to phase three, the secondary threat zone. Who is at risk there?
Phase three is where man-made structures start to complicate the risk. This includes communities between Kirkvine and Porus, properties along the lowlands of the Porus Basin.
And near old embankments, I saw.
Crucially, yes. Homes near historic road or rail embankments. These structures were built without this kind of detailed data.
So they can actually make things worse.
They can inadvertently block or even channel that subsurface flow, sometimes pushing the water more aggressively into neighborhoods. It adds a whole other layer of risk.
That whole structural path it's already mind-blowing. But this is where the McClarty analysis really goes global.
It does.
It pivots from a local disaster in Jamaica to a global warning sign by comparing Manchester to a huge, low-lying karst system thousands of miles away.
Central Florida.
Central Florida.
And this is the core breakthrough of the LoopSpeak intelligence. The Manchester event became the perfect, real-world case study for predicting risk in similar systems.
The question the analysis asked was, how similar are these two places structurally?
Exactly.
And the answer they found is just staggering.
It is. The proprietary data found an 8.5 out of 10 hydrology similarity score.
An 8.5 out of 10.
Between the mountainous interior of Jamaica, Manchester, St. Elizabeth, Clarendon, and the Central Florida corridor from Ocala down through Orlando and Tampa.
That high of a similarity, that's almost saying the engine room of the disaster is identical, even though the two places look completely different on the surface.
That's what it implies. It implies shared failure modes. The similarity isn't about how much it rains, it's about how the bedrock behaves.
So the way water creates risk in Jamaica is highly predictive for Florida.
Very predictive. For example, both systems show the aquifer flooding back upward because of pressure, not just seeping down. Both see sudden sinkhole formations. Both see rapid groundwater rise.
Okay, so if the engine is the same, why does a flood in Jamaica look so different? You get these deep, contained basins of water. In Florida, it often looks like vast, shallow pooling.
That difference is purely about the surface expression. It's topography and soil.
Right.
That's the comparative insight. Jamaica is mountainous, so when the subsurface pressure displaces that water, the high ground funnels it.
It channels it into these high-consequence basins like Porus.
Right, leading to deep, dramatic standing water.
But Florida is famously flat.
Exactly. Florida's flat landscape lets that pressure-driven water just spread out over huge, shallow areas. It might look less dramatic, but it covers so much more infrastructure.
And the soil makes a difference, too.
It does. Jamaica has limestone mixed with clay, which holds water and slows drainage. Florida is sandy and more porous, but once that aquifer is pressurized from below, even sandy soil can't drain it.
Because the water source is subterranean, there's nowhere for it to drain to.
Precisely. You see the same hidden mechanics, just expressed differently by the surface?
Which brings us to the core synthesis of the whole McClarty analysis, what they call the hidden water problem.
This is the unifying concept, and it has to change how these regions look at risk. The lesson is that the biggest flood risk in either Central Florida or inland Jamaica comes from that built-up structural pressure deep underground.
Not just the immediate weather.
No, not just the storm you see on the news.
So if you live in one of these karst regions, your flood risk isn't just about watching the sky.
It's about understanding the ground beneath your feet. The Manchester event gave us the proof.
That flooding can happen without a major storm.
It can, and it will. It was explicit groundwater displacement. That proves the issue is structural, dictated by geology, not just seasonal weather.
And the sinkholes?
The sinkhole belts you see in both Jamaica and Florida, that's not a coincidence. It's the surface evidence of this shared, hidden, and unstable framework below.
So practically, what does this analysis say about our current risk models? Are they wrong?
It says they're insufficient. Traditional flood modeling that's based on, rainfall rates, river levels, surface runoff, it's potentially misleading in these karst environments.
Because if you're only tracking the rain,
you are missing the biggest threat.
You're missing the pressure gauge.
You're missing the pressure gauge, exactly. The shift has to be toward understanding and mapping these subsurface pressure dynamics, these lateral displacement paths, like the one that hit Porus.
It changes everything about development and water management.
It has to. The analysis provides the blueprint for that shift.
So we've broken down this structural analysis from Devin McClary. We've seen how these LoopSpeak documents really reframe the Manchester flood, not as some random disaster, but as a predictable geological reaction.
A reaction dictated by the land's own vulnerability. It's a powerful lesson.
It really is.
And the source's definitive conclusion, I think it really captures the essence of this. It gives you, the listener, a powerful thought to take away.
What's the final word?
Jamaica didn't just flood. The land reacted. And that land behaves just like Florida's limestone belt. The ground didn't fail. The design did.
Wow. The design did.
And that leaves you with this final provocative thought to consider. If the shared structural vulnerability between the mountains of Jamaica and the flat plains of central Florida is an 8.5 out of 10, what other places that look totally different on the surface might share these hidden structural time bombs? Where else is the land's ancient blueprint and not the climate, the thing that dictates the real risk?